Like
And what does a perfect landing look like in a kayak? Like, is it to go nose in, or is it, because a lot of the stuff I've seen of you almost land flat? Is that right?
Dude. Well, there's two ways to do it. You can either land flat, or like a tiny bit nose down on those flat landings to sort of like transfer you a little bit better. But you're mainly doing that off smaller waterfalls, you know, like not much that's over like the 50-foot mark, and a lot of people won't do it much over the 20-foot mark, you know. Yeah, and then as it gets bigger, you want to land like nose down, completely vertical. And the like easy comparison there is if you belly flop into a swimming pool, it hurts, right? And that's because of surface tension, and you're slowing down immediately, not gradually. Whereas when you dive in, you pierce that surface tension, and then you slow down gradually under the water, and it's the exact same in a kayak. But yeah, if you it's all these like tiny little micro adjustments and nuances, you know, like when you see me landing flat, although it looks like I'm flat, a lot of times I'm like just ever so slightly nose down, landing underneath my feet, and that allows it to just like transfer out, and then it doesn't hurt at all, even though you're landing flat.
Doesn't know. I can imagine you used to have this epic lower back pain after you've landed like that. But...
So, I mean, sometimes when I get it wrong, I've certainly been hurt and sore, but a lot of the time, man, it feels fine. You do get this thing we call waterfall neck sometimes, and that's like if you hit like a big, powerful waterfall, you just get ripped back, and the neck is definitely sore for a day or two.
Hucker's neck.
And the waterfall obviously coming off, that breaks the surface of the water as well. So you're trying to aim to get where that water's going in. So you almost so if you like launched off one and landed in the clean water, that'd be terrifying and really bad, right? Right, okay.
You know it, mate. You know it. There's an insane clip. There's a few clips online of people doing that, like gapping the white water and then landing in the flat water and hurting themselves.
Yeah. Wow.
I guess the water as well changes the angle of the, like it helps the kayak be at the correct angle as well, right?
Yeah, mate. Well, some waterfalls are just perfect, you know, because the lip rolls and that transition is just like so gradual and so easy that it sort of sets you up. You know, if you just stay calm and just hold your position, it's gonna set you up into a good angle. But that's really hard to do, you know, because you're like, I want to do something because I'm scared, and
so. What do you do with the paddle in an ideal situation? Let's say off the 75-footer. Do you want to keep the paddle with you? Because I've noticed like some waterfalls, people ditch the paddle and brace, and some, like the gnarly slow-mo clips of you where you're like looking down it like it's a rifle or something. I can't even do what you do with your hand, but it's like...
Dude, so like that trend of throwing your paddle started when people first started doing big waterfalls, and they didn't have like the tuck at the end dialed, and they were landing with the paddle in like a slightly wrong position. Then it breaks, and you know it's like 400 or 500 pounds a time to get a new paddle, and a lot of times you're in a remote location where you can't get another one that easily. So they started throwing it, and that's like a good technique when you're first starting out, because to learn to have the air awareness and the control to tuck with your paddle is really hard. But for me, I just think it looks more stylish, you know, like you're starting the waterfall and you're completing the waterfall like with your full setup of gear, you know, whereas if you throw your paddle, you sort of have to like doggy paddle to it, and maybe there's like another rapid after the waterfall where you need your paddle and stuff. Like I would always just rather hold on to mine.
Yeah. Definitely looks cooler. This is going to be a real like uncle at Christmas sort of question, but what is the biggest fall you've done?
Yeah, mate. Well, waterfalls come in all shapes and sizes, you know. So like a small one can be way gnarlier than a big one, but the biggest, the gnarliest one I ever did was 128 foot, and that's that's this.
Holy.
That's this crazy thing in Mexico, and it's everything, you know. It's gnarly, it's huge, it's hard to access. You have to like abseil down into this canyon, and yeah, that thing is wild.
Is that one and done? The 128 footer was that one that you? It's not really like one that you session, is it?
No, mate. But I went back to Mexico this year because one of my mates wanted to do it, and I briefly thought about going again and hitting it again, and then decided not to before we even got on the plane. And then when I was scouting it with him, I was like, thank God I don't have to go through this again, because it's so intimidating, man. Like being up there and trying to predict what this thing is gonna do as you're dropping in. It's so intimidating. And
wow,
like a lot of times I don't really take that many hits, and I'm lucky. But that thing was like the biggest hit of my life. It completely winded me. It was savage.
God, I
That's
bet.
cool.
So you talked about I'm not a very good swimmer. I'll be honest, right? You've actually seen this firsthand. I'm not good at swimming. So like the idea of being stuck underwater to someone who can't swim that well is really terrifying. When you explain to me like what's it called, like not turbulence, but like the swirls underwater, the currents and stuff.
Current.
Yeah, Bren described to me how you can get like stuck. You touched on it a bit earlier when you talked about like the water and the air content and stuff. But talk about that, because you've had some moments, haven't you, over the years?
Yeah, man, definitely. Well, like, I mean, water's so powerful, you know? And what you get a lot of the times is two currents converging. This creates what we call an eddy line. Who eddy is, I don't know. You can also call it a seam line. That's where two currents meet, and then they come together and they sort of push each other down and create this seam line. And as rivers get bigger and more powerful, that becomes more of an issue, because they can just pull you and your kayak under if it's really big and powerful. And a lot of times, because it's two currents meeting, they sort of start swirling. And on some rivers and locations, they can actually form whirlpools, which, if you're confident and you're happy holding your breath, or like, honestly, we just mess around in them. We just mess around in them, because it's really good training for like getting trashed, staying calm in an uncomfortable situation, and rolling up at the end, you know? But there's certainly a risk involved with that, because the kayak's full of air, right? So the kayak is going to come to the surface at some point. But if you're out of your kayak and you have all of that water on top of you, then it's hard to get to the surface.
Did you enjoy this clip? If so, please like and subscribe. The full episode is available by hitting one of the links on the screen right now, or type the Ride Companion into your favourite podcast app. We've even put links in the show description for you. Cheers!